The ash fields of Karos 4 were silent, not the peaceful kind of silence, but the heavy, suffocating kind that settled after something terrible had already happened and no one had come back to fix it. The sky above was a dim orange haze, choked with drifting particles from the ancient fires that had never fully died. Wind swept across the plains in long, whispering gusts, carrying with it the scent of burned metal and something older, something that had once been alive. Survey drone Unit 7 hovered low over the terrain, its sensors flickering as it scanned the desolation. Thermal anomaly detected. It transmitted. The command ship hanging in orbit responded almost instantly. Confirm classification. The drone adjusted altitude, zooming in. At first, it looked like nothing more than a dark shape curled into the ground, a mound of soot and broken debris. Then it moved. Life form confirmed. The drone replied. Juvenile. Draconic. That changed everything. Within minutes, retrieval team was dispatched, armored, cautious, and very, very alert. Dragons were not to be taken lightly. Even hatchlings. They arrived in a low hum of engines, their transport settling onto the cracked surface, with a hiss of displaced ash. Boots hit the ground one by one, each step sending small gray clouds into the air. Commander Reth scanned the horizon, visor adjusting to the low visibility. Keep distance, he ordered. We don't know its temperament. The team spread out, forming a cautious semicircle as they approached the anomaly. That's when they saw it clearly. The hatchling was small. Too small to survive alone out here for long. Its scales were a dull charcoal color, edges still soft and uneven, barely formed. Its wings, folded tightly against its sides, looked fragile, more decorative than functional. But its posture, that was something else entirely. It was curled tightly around something beneath its body, claws dug into the ground as if anchoring itself in place. Its tail wrapped protectively, its head low and tense, guarding. Strange. One of the alien observers murmured through the comms. Why would a hatchling isolate itself like this? Commander Reth didn't answer, because the moment they stepped closer, the hatchling reacted. Its head snapped up, golden eyes flared with sudden, intense awareness, and it hissed. The sound was sharp, raw, more instinct than strength, but it carried a warning that every being present understood immediately. Do not come closer. The team froze. Weapons weren't raised, not yet, but hands hovered near triggers. Easy, Reth said under his breath. It's just a hatchling. But even as he said it, he knew better. There was nothing just about a dragon. What is it guarding? Another voice asked. The drone shifted position, angling for a better view. Slowly, carefully, it zoomed in on the object beneath the hatchling's body. The feed flickered, then stabilized, and for a moment, no one spoke. Is that? One of the technicians started. Scrap, another finished. It was small, bent, broken beyond any practical use. A tiny aircraft, clearly artificial, clearly manufactured, but old. The paint had been scorched nearly black. Its wings snapped unevenly, one side crushed inward. A single wheel dangled uselessly beneath it. A toy. A human toy. Commander Reth frowned. That makes no sense, he muttered. Why would it protect something like that? No one had an answer, because dragons didn't value things like this. They collected power, rare materials, objects of meaning, not debris, not something so insignificant. They took another step forward. Just one. The hatchling's reaction was immediate. It spread its wings, small though they were, and bared its teeth. A low growl vibrated through its chest. It wasn't loud. It wasn't powerful, but it was determined, and that made it dangerous. Hold position, Reth ordered quickly. The team stopped. Ash swirled between them and the creature, the air thick with tension. For a long moment, neither side moved. Then, something shifted. The hatchling adjusted its body slightly, tightening its grip on the object beneath it, and in doing so, it exposed just a little more of the broken plane, close enough for the drone to capture detail. Scratches, marks, not from impact, from claws. Repeated, small, precise, like someone had been trying to fix it. Again, and again, and again, failing every time. The realization spread slowly, unspoken, uncomfortable. This isn't random. one of the observers said quietly. No, another agreed. It's intentional. The hatchling wasn't just guarding the object. It was attached to it, emotionally, which shouldn't have been possible. And yet, there it was. A gust of wind howled across the plains, stronger this time, kicking up a thick cloud of ash that momentarily obscured everything. The hatchling flinched, just slightly, and then it made a sound, soft, barely audible over the wind. A whimper, not aggressive, not defensive, something else, something that didn't belong in a creature built for fire and fury. The team went still. Even the comms fell silent, because in that one small sound, everything changed. Commander Reth exhaled slowly. That's not guarding territory, he said. He hesitated. No one finished the sentence, because they all already knew. The hatchling wasn't protecting the toy from them. It was protecting it from being lost, from being taken, from being gone, like something else already was. Far in the distance, barely visible through the ash haze, something jagged broke the horizon. A wreck, old, burned, forgotten. And suddenly, the broken toy didn't seem so meaningless anymore. The hatchling lowered its head again, curling tighter around the plane, eyes never leaving them, watching, waiting, daring anyone to try. And for the first time since they landed, no one moved forward, because this wasn't a recovery mission anymore. This was something else, something none of them had expected, something far more fragile than a dragon. And none of them yet realized that everything was about to change, because somewhere behind them, a human had just stepped off the transport, and he wasn't turning back. The transport door hadn't fully sealed behind him when Elias Varn heard the growl. Low, unsteady, but filled with something raw enough to make even trained soldiers hesitate. He stepped down into the ash. The ground crunched beneath his boots, brittle and uneven, like walking over the bones of something long dead. The air tasted metallic, dry enough to scrape his throat with every breath. Ahead, the team stood frozen in a loose semicircle, weapons lowered, but not relaxed. That alone told him everything. Status? Elias asked, adjusting the strap of his worn tool pack. Commander Reth didn't turn. Juvenile draconic life form. Defensive posture. Unpredictable. Elias nodded slowly. And the problem? A pause. Then, reluctantly, it won't let go of the object it's guarding. Elias stepped forward just enough to see past them, and there it was, the hatchling, small, too small, curled tight around something broken, and staring at them like the entire world depended on it not moving. Elias exhaled quietly. That's not aggression, he said. Reth's voice sharpened. It's still a dragon. Yeah, Elias replied, but it's also a kid. The wind shifted, carrying a swirl of ash between them. The hatchling's eyes snapped toward the movement, then back to the line of figures standing across from it, waiting, measuring. It didn't trust them. It couldn't afford to. Elias stepped past the line. Hold, Reth barked immediately. Engineer, fall back. Elias didn't. If you push it, it'll panic, he said calmly. And if it panics, Reth countered, someone gets hurt. Elias glanced back. Or we all prove it right. That shut the commander up. For a moment, Elias walked forward alone. No weapon, no shield, just slow, deliberate steps. Each one careful enough not to send too much ash into the air. Each movement measured, like he was approaching something fragile instead of something that could burn him alive. The hatchling tensed instantly. Its wings flared slightly, too small to be threatening, but enough to show intent. Its claws tightened around the object beneath it, and then it hissed, sharper this time. A warning. Elias stopped. Not far, but not close enough to invade its space. Hey, he said softly. The word felt small in the vast emptiness of the ash fields. The hatchling didn't respond. It just stared, eyes bright, unblinking, ready. Elias lowered himself slowly to one knee, making himself smaller, less of a threat. I'm not here to take it, he said. The wind whispered again. Ash danced between them. The hatchling's gaze flickered, not away, but downward, just for a fraction of a second, toward the object it was protecting, then back to him, still guarded, still ready. Behind him, the comms crackled. "This is unnecessary," one of the observers muttered. "The object has no value." Elias didn't look back. "Then you won't mind leaving it alone," he said. No one answered. Slowly, deliberately, Elias reached toward his belt. The hatchling reacted instantly. A sharp growl. A shift forward. Ready to strike. Elias froze mid-motion. "Easy," he murmured. His hand hovered there for a second longer, then changed direction. Instead of reaching forward, he reached into his pack. Slow, visible, non-threatening. When his hand came back out, it held something small. A tool. A worn, slightly dented wrench. Nothing impressive. Nothing dangerous. But something familiar. Something honest. Elias held it up where the hatchling could see. "I fix things," he said quietly. The hatchling blinked. Just once. Its head tilted, slightly, almost imperceptibly. Confusion. Curiosity. It didn't understand the words, but it understood the tone. The intent. Elias didn't move closer. Didn't reach for the object. He just sat there, waiting, letting the silence stretch, letting the hatchling decide. Time passed. Seconds. Maybe minutes. No one behind him dared interrupt. Even the wind seemed to quiet. The hatchling shifted. A small movement. Careful. Testing. Its claws loosened, just a fraction. Then tightened again. Still unsure. Still afraid. Elias softened his voice even more. "I won't take it," he said. "I just want to see." Another pause. Another long, fragile moment. Then, the hatchling did something unexpected. It didn't retreat. It didn't attack. It adjusted. Slowly, it shifted its body. Not away from the object, but just enough to expose a piece of it. A broken wing. Bent metal. Blackened paint. Still held tightly beneath its claws. But visible now. Offered. Just a little. Elias didn't reach out. Didn't break the moment. He only nodded once. Acknowledging. Respecting. "Okay," he said softly. "That's enough." Behind him, someone exhaled in disbelief. "Did it just—" "Yes," Reth said quietly. "And don't ruin it." Elias leaned forward just slightly, enough to study the exposed piece, without invading the hatchling's space. Up close, the damage was worse than it had looked. The wing wasn't just snapped, it had been crushed. Edges jagged, metal warped, and along its surface, marks, scratches, tiny, repeated, careful. The hatchling had been trying to fix it, again and again, with claws that weren't meant for repair. Elias felt something tighten in his chest. "You've been working on it," he murmured. The hatchling's eyes flickered again, not understanding the words, but reacting to the recognition. Elias leaned back, giving space again, showing he wasn't a threat. Then he held up the wrench once more, turning it slightly, so it caught what little light filtered through the ash-filled sky. "I'm better at it than you," he said gently. A small, almost playful tone. Careful. Light. The hatchling stared at him. Long. Unblinking. Then its gaze dropped once more, to the broken toy beneath it. And this time, it didn't tighten its grip. It loosened. Just a little. Not surrender. Not trust. Not yet. But something close. Something fragile. Something new. Elias smiled faintly. "Yeah," he whispered. "We can work with that." And for the first time since they arrived, the distance between them didn't feel impossible anymore. The ash fields felt quieter now. Not because the wind had stopped. It still whispered across the broken land, but because something had shifted between them. The hatchling no longer looked like it was bracing for a fight. It looked like it was waiting. Elias stayed where he was. Low. Still. Careful not to rush what had taken so long to begin. "You've been trying to fix it," he said softly, nodding toward the exposed wing. The hatchling's gaze followed his. Down. To the broken plane. Its claws shifted again. Less tense this time. More uncertain than defensive. Elias exhaled slowly. "Mind if I take a closer look?" He didn't move when he asked. Didn't reach. Didn't assume. Because this wasn't about permission and words. It was about trust. And trust didn't come easy out here. Behind him, the comm stayed silent. No one dared interrupt. Even Commander Reth knew better now. The hatchling hesitated. Its tail flicked once, sending a small spray of ash into the air. Its wings twitched, instinct warring with something new. Then slowly, carefully, it shifted. More than before. Not away from the plane. Never away from it. But enough to reveal it fully. The entire broken toy lay between its foreclaws now. Exposed. But still protected. Still within reach. Still its. Elias felt that subtle change like a weight lifting. Not gone. But lighter. He leaned forward just a little more. Still slow. Still measured. Until he was close enough to see everything. The toy plane was worse than he'd thought. One wing completely snapped at the base. The other bent inward at an unnatural angle. The nose crushed slightly. Paint blistered and blackened from heat exposure. One of the tiny wheels was missing entirely. And along the surface, there they were again. Scratch marks. Dozens of them. Layered. Repeated. Some shallow. Some deeper. All careful. All deliberate. All failed. Elias swallowed. "You didn't give up, did you?" he murmured. The hatchling made a soft sound in its throat. Not quite a growl. Not quite a whimper. Something in between. Elias reached out slowly. Not for the center. Not for the heart of it. Just the very edge of the broken wing. His fingers stopped inches away. Waiting. The hatchling tensed. Its claws flexed. Eyes sharp again. But not angry. Afraid. Elias held still. "I won't take it," he said quietly. Another pause. Another long, fragile moment balanced on nothing but instinct. Then, the hatchling didn't pull away. Elias gently touched the metal. Light, barely there. Just enough to feel the damage. The cold. The fragility. The history. And something about it. Something about the weight, the shape, the wear. Felt familiar. Too familiar. Elias frowned slightly. Then turned the plane just enough to catch more light. And that's when he saw it. A marking. Faded. Scratched. But still visible beneath the soot. A tiny symbol. Human-made. A production stamp. Old. Very old. Elias's breath caught. No way. Behind him, Reth spoke quietly. "What is it?" Elias didn't answer immediately. His eyes were already lifting. Past the hatchling. Past the ash. Toward the horizon. And there, barely visible through the haze, was the wreck. Jagged. Broken. Half buried in ash and time. A transport ship. Human. Elias stood slowly. The hatchling tensed at the movement, but didn't lash out. Didn't retreat. It just watched him. Uncertain. Elias pointed toward the wreck. "That ship," he said softly. "Has it always been here?" No one answered right away. Then one of the observers spoke. "Records show a crash approximately 12 cycles ago. No survivors recovered. 12 years. Elias looked back at the hatchling. At the toy. At the scratches. It clicked. All of it. At once. "You found it there," he said quietly. The hatchling tilted its head slightly. Listening. Not understanding, but feeling. Elias crouched again. Closer this time. More certain. "You found someone there," he continued. His voice softer now. He didn't need confirmation. He already knew. A child's toy. From a crashed human ship. A hatchling that refused to leave. That tried, over and over, to fix something it didn't understand. That guarded it like it mattered more than anything else. Elias exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he whispered. "I get it." The hatchling made a small sound again. Quieter this time. Not defensive. Not warning. Something else. Something that felt lonely. And then, it did something none of them expected. It nudged the plane. Gently. Carefully. Forward. Toward Elias. Not far. Just a few inches. But enough. More than enough. Elias froze. His chest tightened. Not because he was afraid, but because he understood exactly what that meant. The hatchling wasn't giving it up. It wasn't letting go. It was asking. Asking something it didn't have words for. Something it had tried to do itself. Something it had failed to do. Over. And over. And over again. Elias looked at the toy. Then back at the hatchling. Golden eyes watching him. Waiting. Hoping. He reached out. This time fully. Gently lifting the broken plane from the ash. The hatchling didn't stop him. Didn't fight. It leaned forward slightly. As if making sure he didn't drop it. Elias held it carefully in both hands. Turning it. Studying it. Understanding every fracture. every weakness, every impossible piece. Then he looked back at the hatchling and smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just certain. I'll try, he said. The hatchling stilled, eyes locked on him, as if those words meant something, even if it didn't fully understand them. Behind them, the ash field stretched on, silent, broken, unforgiving. But between them, something had changed, something fragile, something dangerous in its own way. Hope. They said it wouldn't work. They said it wasn't worth it. They said a broken toy on a dead world didn't matter. Elias ignored all of them. The ash fields had shifted into something quieter now, not empty, but expectant, as if even the wind was waiting to see what would happen next. Elias sat cross-legged in the dust, the broken toy plane resting carefully in his lap. Around him, scattered pieces of salvaged metal, wiring, and compact tools lay arranged in careful order. Not rushed, not chaotic, deliberate. The hatchling stayed close, closer than before, not curled around the toy this time, but beside Elias, watching every movement, every adjustment, every decision. You're going to have to trust me, Elias murmured. The hatchling tilted its head slightly. Its golden eyes followed his hands. Unblinking, Elias started with the wing. The worst part. He ran his fingers along the jagged break, feeling the fractures, mapping the stress points in his mind. It won't hold as is, he muttered. From behind, one of the observers scoffed quietly over the comms. It won't hold at all. Elias didn't respond. Instead, he reached for a thin strip of salvage plating. Lightweight, flexible, but strong enough to reinforce structure. He aligned it carefully along the broken edge, measured, adjusted. Then, with precise movements, he secured it. Not crude, not rushed, clean, intentional. The hatchling leaned in slightly, closer, its nose almost brushing Elias's hands. Watching, learning. You tried to fix it, Elias said softly, glancing at the scratch marks. You just didn't have the right tools. The hatchling made a quiet sound, not defensive, almost thoughtful. Next came the frame. The body had been warped by heat, the internal balance thrown off completely. Elias dismantled part of it, slowly, carefully, removing what couldn't be saved. The hatchling stiffened at that, a low, uncertain rumble in its chest. Elias paused immediately. Hey, he said gently. I'm not breaking it. I'm fixing it. The hatchling didn't understand the words, but it understood the pause, the reassurance, the fact that Elias stopped when it reacted. After a moment, it relaxed. Just a little. Good, Elias whispered. We're doing this together. Hours passed. The sky dimmed slightly, the orange haze deepening as light struggled through the ash. Still, Elias worked, rebalancing the frame, reinforcing the structure, rebuilding what could be rebuilt, and carefully replacing what couldn't. Piece by piece, step by step, the observers had gone quiet, even the skeptics, because what they were watching wasn't just repair, it was care. Finally, Elias leaned back slightly. The plane rested in his hands. Whole, not perfect, scars still visible, edges still worn, but stronger, balanced, ready. Except for one thing. It still won't fly, someone muttered. Elias nodded faintly. Not like this. He reached into his pack again, this time, pulling out something small, compact, sleek, a micro-thruster unit, standard utility gear, not meant for toys. You're kidding, one of the observers said. That thing will tear it apart. Not if I tune it right, Elias replied calmly. The hatchling watched closely as Elias adjusted the thruster, calibrating output, reducing thrust levels, balancing weight distribution, every setting precise, every movement intentional. You wanted it to fly, didn't you? Elias said softly, glancing at the hatchling. The creature didn't respond, but its eyes didn't leave the plane. Elias mounted the thruster beneath the fuselage, secured it, rechecked the alignment, then adjusted the wing angles one final time. Silence settled over the ash fields. Heavy, anticipating. Elias stood slowly, holding the plane in both hands. He turned toward the hatchling. All right, he said quietly. Let's see if we got it right. The hatchling rose to its feet, small wings twitching, body tense. Eyes wide, Elias activated the system. For a moment, nothing happened. A flicker, a faint hum. The thruster sputtered weakly. One of the observers sighed. I told you. Then, the hum steadied. The wings trembled. The plane shifted slightly in Elias's hands. Lighter, alive. Elias loosened his grip. Slowly, carefully, and the plane lifted. Just an inch at first. Unsteady, wobbling. Then, higher. The thruster stabilized. The wings caught the air. And suddenly, it wasn't falling. It was flying. A small gasp rippled through the comms. No one spoke. No one dared. The hatchling froze. Completely still. Its eyes widened, reflecting the small, hovering shape in front of it, as if it couldn't believe what it was seeing. The plane circled once, a shaky arc through the ash-filled air, then steadied, smooth, controlled, alive. The hatchling took a step forward, then another. Then, without thinking, it leapt. Its tiny wings spread instinctively, flapping hard, clumsy, untrained. But it didn't matter, because for the first time, it wasn't chasing something broken. It was chasing something that flew. A sound burst from its chest. Loud, bright, uncontrolled. Not a roar, not a cry. Joy. It chased a plane in uneven circles, stumbling, jumping, flapping, learning the air as it moved. The plane dipped, turned, adjusted, always just ahead, always just within reach. Elias laughed softly under his breath. Yeah, he said. Go on. The ash fields didn't feel dead anymore. The wreck in the distance didn't feel silent, because above them, something broken had risen again, and the hatchling was no longer alone in the sky. The plane didn't fall. That was the first thing everyone noticed, even after several passes through the ash-choked air, even after sharp turns and sudden dips. The small, rebuilt craft held steady. Not perfect, not flawless, but flying. The hatchling followed it like it had been born to. Clumsy at first, wings beating unevenly, movements too eager, too fast, but learning with every second. Adapting, growing. Its small body rose higher with each attempt, catching the air just a little longer every time. And with each near flight, that sound came again. Bright, unrestrained, alive. No one spoke. Not the observers. Not the soldiers. Not even Commander Reth. Because what they were watching wasn't something they could categorize. Wasn't something they had protocol for. Is this normal? One of the observers finally whispered. Reth shook his head slowly. No, he said, and don't pretend you understand it. Elias stood quietly, hands resting at his sides, watching, not interfering, not controlling, just there. The hatchling swooped low, nearly tumbling as it tried to follow a sharper turn. The plane adjusted automatically, its small thruster compensating, slowing just enough to keep the distance manageable. The hatchling caught up, just barely, claws stretching forward, almost touching, then missing. It landed awkwardly, skidding through the ash in a cloud of gray. For a moment, it stayed there, still, silent. The plane hovered nearby, steady, waiting. Elias felt the tension return, not from fear, from memory. The hatchling lifted its head slowly, eyes fixed on the plane, unmoving, uncertain. For a heartbeat, it looked like before, like the same creature that had curled around something broken, refusing to let go. Then, it stood. It didn't retreat, didn't curl back around it, didn't guard. It stepped forward, and leapt again. This time, higher. Its wings caught more air, held longer, carried it just a little farther. Not chasing something lost, not protecting something broken, but reaching. The difference was small, but it changed everything. Elias exhaled slowly. Yeah, he murmured. That's it. Behind him, one of the observers spoke, voice low with disbelief. No species has ever formed a cooperative bond with a dragon at that stage of development. Another added, there's no recorded behavior like this, no precedent. Elias didn't turn, didn't look at them. Then maybe it's time you stopped waiting for precedent, he said. They fell silent again, because there was no argument for what they were seeing. The hatchling climbed higher, still uneven, still imperfect, but stronger, more confident. The plane arced upward slightly. Testing. Encouraging. The hatchling followed. For a moment. Just one. Its wings held. Perfectly. And it flew. Not far. Not long. But real. When it landed again, it didn't stumble. It didn't collapse. It stood tall. Chest rising and falling quickly. Eyes bright. Alive in a way it hadn't been before. The plane drifted down slowly, settling into a gentle hover before Elias reached up and caught it. Careful. Respectful. The hatchling approached. Not cautiously. Not defensively. Curiously. It stopped just in front of him. Close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from its scales. Close enough that he could see the subtle changes in its posture. No tension. No fear. Just trust. Elias knelt slowly, holding the plane out. "You want it?" he asked quietly. The hatchling didn't snatch it, didn't clutch it like before. It nudged it, gently, then looked up at him. Elias smiled. "Yeah," he said softly. "I figured." He adjusted his grip, then released the plane again. The thruster hummed to life, lifting it back into the air. The hatchling didn't guard it this time, didn't anchor itself to the ground. It followed, and this time, it didn't look like something chasing a memory. It looked like something chasing a future. The ash field stretched out endlessly around them. The wreck in the distance still stood, silent, broken, a reminder of what had been lost. But it didn't feel the same anymore. Because now, something moved in the sky. Small, fragile, but real. Commander Reth stepped forward slightly, watching the hatchling circle overhead. "What happens now?" he asked. Elias stood beside him, hands resting loosely at his sides, eyes following the small shape weaving through the air. "We don't take it," Elias said. "We don't cage it. We don't turn it into something it's not." Reth glanced at him. "And you think it will stay?" Elias shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "I think it'll choose." Above them, the hatchling let out another bright, echoing call as it climbed higher, stronger now, more controlled. And for the first time since they arrived, the sky didn't feel empty. Elias watched it for a long moment. Then quietly, almost to himself, he said, "Some things are meant to be kept." The hatchling dove again, chasing the small flying plane through the drifting ash. Not guarding, not mourning, living. And somewhere in the distance, where broken metal met forgotten time, something that had once ended, finally felt like it had been given a beginning again.